This is Assassin's Creed Mirage. It was released in 2023 and it takes place in Baghdad, and we are playing as Basim, and we will explore the environments of this game. So here we are on our board using PureF, and we'll be looking into the work of the artists of Assassin's Creed Mirage. So we'll get started here with Amancio De Almeida, who worked on very beautiful, let's zoom in a little bit, beautiful floors featuring mosaic. So we can read a little bit. This is set pieces for the mosaic kit that I did to dress up some part of the world. Did everything from the modeling, UV, and trim work to the final stage in the engine. So of course, there were other people involved. Textures and blend materials to our talented texture artists, Vadim Tujeron and Camille Arnaud. So it's always, of course, a matter of collaboration. But this is very, very interesting. I'm going to go a bit fast. They're super interesting, but it's just to give you an idea of the different variations. And I want to get to the bottom part quickly. So you can see the different shapes, different patterns, very, very beautiful. And here is the very interesting part. So it is a trim that is UV'd. So the pieces are UV'd using this trim, right? Which is flat. Obviously, it's a trim sheet. You can see it repeated several times, so it's easier to see exactly how it's going to be laid out. And the UVs are prepared and unwrapped. I mean, the mesh is unwrapped in such a way, and even the round shapes are perfectly straight so that it reads. I mean, this is a bit blurry, of course, sorry to zoom in like that. So it reads very well, right? And you can appreciate the respect of the architecture, of course, the style, the artistic style, with these shapes going over and under. This is really, really interesting stuff. And yeah, this is how you can come up with those very interesting and complex shapes, especially, I mean, they're all featuring these kind of patterns. So you get a better understanding on how to approach this. If you were to do anything North African or Mesopotamia, any of those styles, I mean, they're all very different. I don't want to disrespect any culture. Like, there are so many different to mention, but all those intricate patterns, like how to approach having that in your environments, this is the way. This is really very clearly shown here. This is very, very interesting. Let's move on to more of his work. So other kits. So this is a set piece for the Rich and the Izu Underground kit that I did has been used to the architect to build the world at some specific level. Everything from modeling, UV, trim work to the final stage in the engine. So that's interesting to see that different studios work differently on different productions, right? So you see those big pieces, very large pieces, very interesting, and they are modeled with the door frame, with those details. So as he mentioned, he went all the way to the final stage of production. Then of course the windows and the doors were done separately, and then you see one door with its variation, actually different styles, and yeah, the same material but with different blending techniques, so it doesn't look exactly the same. Very good stuff. Same here, you see different types, different dimensions, smaller ones here, probably 3 meters, and this is probably 6 meters, and very good stuff. You see it's blended with also some more pattern. There are more techniques used also, probably edge decals on these corners, so it doesn't look like straight line. You can tell that this line is not straight, right? So it looks like it's aged, like it's stones and bricks which have been weathered, which has seen many, decades, maybe even centuries. So this is exactly how you do it. I believe there's not that much geometry. There is a little bit, it's not straight lines, but then you have edge decals that are coming over and breaking those hard lines. I have a little bit more. Let me start on this side actually. So this is the Izu civilization, right? So this is completely different. It's a imaginary style of architecture from an alien race, which, no spoilers, but if you've played Assassin's Creed, you know what they are. And of course it's different technology, different materials, so it's really interesting also. And then you see some broken pieces, so you see how those are built, and then you see kits of rubbles and like variations. So you can tell that this is really, in many cases they are very low poly. The bigger pieces have a bit more geometry, but this can be kept very low. And this is reused. This is probably instantiated. It's used as instances, so you can have tons of those. But still, it really shows that the budget was probably tight for the geometry and for everything. This is one thing I noticed by playing the game, which has some and this is the same artist, by the way. This is a set of some assets that I worked on during production. Some of them are hero props that are used on cinematic, quest, or special occasion or places, and some of them are used to dress up the world a bit everywhere. So again, there are other people involved, so you can tell that, yeah, some are more detailed, there's more work, more time that have been put in those. Those are super nice too, but those are reused over and over in the world, right? And doesn't make them less interesting, but there's a little bit less detail involved than here and there. Next, we will look into the work of Nikolay Bonev, who has worked on. He was responsible of making 2 of the doors of the round city of Baghdad. So those are not just like any doors. Those are absolutely huge, right? So if you've played a game, you did come across some of those, and those are very large. And this is very interesting because a lot of artists, juniors or graduates from school, are wondering how to texture properly, or just how to make those very large pieces look good. Well, this is the way. It's as simple as that. It looks very good. The detail, the weathering, the wear and tear, the variation, so that they don't look all the same, is done done very well. You can see, I would say that like the door itself has very simple geometry, very basic, not basic, but like quite, it's very well optimized. And then all those ornamental pieces, this is what is adding a lot of details, and it is very good looking. It has tons of details at the end of the day, and here is how it's done. So those pieces were sculpted in ZBrush and organized in trims here, like you see. So you have a few that are different, with some different, just slightly different shape, and they can be reused. So you can spin them, you can reuse them a lot of times on the door, on all the parts, so that it doesn't look so repetitive. So you see all those little parts are done separately. They are baked, and then they are textured, and then they're ready to be assembled. And then you have the other material, right? Because you have a blend, as you can see here. So you blend between the clean texture, cleanish, right? But mostly clean, and the very dusty, dirty variation. And here it is in all its glory. It's very, very nice. It's done with blended materials and or vertex paint, depending on what they use. This, it's not specified here. And you have another one, which this one is in wood. So it's completely different style, different approach, with lots of, you know, little rivets and little metallic iron parts that are holding the wood together. And everything is, of course, textured and observing the textile density, so it looks very good. And then you have a nice material, very, very cool looking material. Then you have those bricks, which are exposed a little bit underneath larger blocks. This is very, very good stuff. Here you have another one, which is for those domes, those little parts on the top of the, mostly the religious buildings, I guess. And you see also, like, this is really, really good stuff. You can appreciate the roughness, how it's been worked, and then the blended material of soil. It's really, really nice. Then you can see here the, I cannot call them the clean version, but the unique, like the different texture sets that are used together, that are blended together, which sells very well the age of the material. That's really, really interesting stuff. And we have a little bit more, again, from the same artist who worked on some props. So those props making was responsible for making props of the, like in the mission department, if you will. So some props that are a bit more specific. So you have this gate right here, which involves different type of materials with the moss, the blending of it. Then you have those levers, those system to open the gates, right? Those floodgates. You have, so you have a nice variety, right? Then you have more decorative items here and there. This is really cool. Then books, stacks of books. Very, very good stuff. Here we will look into the work of Amandoleo Paul Dayo, who worked on the city walls kit. So that was quite the task, because again, if for those who have played the game, those are absolutely huge, colossal walls all around the main inner city of Baghdad, and that is very, very interesting. So he had on the outskirts of Baghdad. So he worked on several modules that form the kit as a whole. The challenging yet rewarding experience, I guess I can totally imagine, because so many different pieces probably were needed, and like making everything fit together. It's all related to gameplay also. Everything must be climbable. Not everything, not every part, but some. And then there are enemies standing on top. There are NPCs in some cases, but mostly enemies. So yeah, there's a lot going on, a lot of stuff to consider. More than just modeling, texturing, and making them fit together. So very interesting. We see them, actually I should start with these parts where we see broken parts also, which is always very interesting. And the long shapes, which, well, you know, definitely we can start to see some repetition here and there, but I mean, this is what it is. What they were recreating something that did exist, and it's, I mean, I don't know how, in what condition it is today, but I don't believe it's in this condition, but they had some references. Long structures, huge structures like that, I mean, you're bound to see some repetition, but you can pay attention, like the columns are not laid out the same, it's not textured the same. You can see quite a bit of variation, like not every piece is seen. You can see the repetition. It's very well done. Very, very well done, with the help of blended materials, vertex painting, and whatever else, decals and whatever else they were using. The result is really, really great. And this is also a good shot, very good shot. So you see how it is reused so much. Like they had to decide on how they would cut it, how they would make it fit, how many pieces, how many variations was enough. That is an interesting work. And we have a close-up of the destroyed part, which is always interesting and challenging for juniors and people who haven't done so many times. Really selling the realism, or the making it believable. It's always a challenge. You can always put some additional meshes on the side to hide some stuff, but the blending of the materials, it's always very challenging, and this is really, really well done. It's really, really nice. Love it. If you are interested in learning how to apply those techniques that we're covering while analyzing those games, I have created a class in which I show everything step by step. I show all the techniques, all the tricks. There are no time lapse, nothing is done off screen. And I take the time to explain what we do and why we do it. I show the best practices, and we are covering a small environment from A to Z. We are showing every single step of how it's done on a professional production. So if you are interested, check it out. There's the link in the description, and there's a discount available with the code provided. Here we have Radi Avramov, who did a lot of work, or could post a lot of his work on Artstation, and we're very lucky and fortunate. Thank you very much to the artist. And also, he's providing a lot of information, which is phenomenal. So let's look into what the artist has to say. So his main task was to be a third modeling owner of the Rich Kit with other artists, to create a lot of assets, plus mentoring a team of 8 artists together with Yana Pencheva and Niko Stoyanov, and to look for architectural credibility on their work too. That's quite the mandate. And then these assets were started by another artist, those specific assets. So Sveltoslav Georgiev, I'm so sorry if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, your name. So the task was to polish these assets. So what did he do? Replaced most of the meshes by developing more detailed versions of them. Added secondary and tertiary shapes. So, more details, the frames, the windows, some additional, those little beams that you use to actually climb those walls. So sticking out bricks, damages, wooden elements, decorative elements, there you go. Added a lot of decals, added paint and other blendings of the material. So you see, this is what I'm saying all the time, blending materials and vertex paint. Added more materials created by Nikolay Bonev, the artist we just saw earlier. It's Svetlana Valkanova. Worked on the proper navigation and climbing. So it's not just the art. I mean, a lot of the work for an artist is art, of course, but in video games, you have to work on the gameplay. So you have to think, accommodate, facilitate, and do a lot of stuff which is related to gameplay. And also, when you are working on such a franchise, you have to take into account the real architectural style and adapt it, translate it in the 3D world, and then furthermore translate it in a video game, which has to be fun. So it's a lot of work. So the artist here did really a lot of work, and we can appreciate here part of the kit in another context here with different lighting. So, you know, if you've played the game, this is like, you're very familiar. This is part of Baghdad. The game is really beautiful. I really noticed personally when I, like, this is what struck me first, really, the architecture in general was like so nice, and some parts were very detailed, and even the parts that were not as detailed were in very good shape. They were looking good. Nothing was like there were no straight lines almost anywhere on buildings. So that really caught my attention. And then you see also the presentation is really cool with, you know, at an angle with the character Basim climbing with the eagle. That's really nice stuff. Nice touch. You can appreciate here the blending of the materials, the decals that are used, the blending, edge decals also that we will look into a little bit further. Then some more with a different angle. Then you can appreciate different materials, the wood, the kind of clay, the bricks, so much stuff going on, so much information made available. That is so great and so appreciated for people who want to learn. These are not just, I mean, this is a lot of fun. I personally look at these things in my free time, but it's a gold mine. Like I think I repeat it in every one of those videos, but it's really a gold mine to study and to replicate and integrate in your art, in your skills. Wherever, if you're working on your own, looking for your first job, you're working at a studio, and you're not quite doing, you know, your passion. Like you have a job, and that's fine, and that's perfect, and like you're already lucky. But you're working on, could be anything, right? Different kind of game, different kind of project in general. That's not necessarily your favorite type, but that's fine. Work is work, and as an environment artist, as long as you're working on environments or stuff related to levels and environments, you're at the right spot, right? You should be learning anything that comes your way. But before you get that dream job that is really what you wanted when you were in school and what you were really, you know, dreaming of, well, you got a lot to learn. You got a lot to do before you get there. And I'm sure all these artists had to go through. So now we can appreciate their work, and they're, honestly, I feel that they're giving back in a way which is so appreciated, because we can understand, learn, and get better out of looking at this. And this is just fantastic. So he has a lot of other works. Let's look into that. So another kit. This is Rich Kit add-on modules. Which this one was the Rich Kit also, but specifically window and walls. This one is add-on modules. So that's interesting. So his task was, it was structured the same way. Basically, was working with 3 other artists and mentoring 8 artists, a team of 8 artists. Then he worked on add-on models that he created. The one from the first post was also a benchmark that incorporated the standard for all the stucco work in our mandate and defined the materials needed. So that's great. So the first post was this one, I believe, or maybe not. Maybe not, I'm not sure. Anyways, also, there's always like a first part of a mandate, which is establishing the art, establishing, you know, the poly count, establishing a lot of stuff. So, I mean, the visual quality, of course, but also what they can get away with, what techniques they will use, and so on and so forth. So that's always a very important part of the work. Also, the number of layers in the structure of the wall and the proper approach for the weathering of the assets. I guess that was like really the challenge, because I frankly don't exactly remember when historically the game takes place. My guess it's a long time ago, yes. But you know, if Basim meets Eivor, it should bring us around 600, 700 AD. That's an educated guess, but it's kind of wild also. So I'm not so sure. I don't remember. I played the game, but I honestly can't remember. But you know, still, those structures are centuries old, probably. So like there's something very, very important about the weathering, right? So we can appreciate, again, like the same base material, the stucco bricks, the wood, which is going to be reused everywhere, but with some variations here and there to keep it interesting and diversified, which is very interesting. And those things are used also as gameplay elements to signify to the player that they can navigate there. And then you can see a zoom, very cool. There's also the vaulting through the open windows. Then you have those pieces, like it's so much work goes into that. You have to appreciate it. And look, like this is what I like. The shape, the silhouette is so far from being straight, and that is a must because those structures have such age that, you know, the materials worked, and even if they were laid out straight initially, they're completely wobbly by now, right? And it's very, very important to have that. So that was really, really good. And I like here also the layering of the materials that you can see. The bricks, there's a layer of brick, and then the stucco over it, and then you see some of the bricks again, and then the wood, of course. That's just great stuff. And you can appreciate another variation of the blending. And here you can see better the layering. That's just very, very good stuff. And always with the presentation with the character and the eagle. That's really, really cool. So variations, same idea with other variations. You have another one right here, which is another variation, and of course it's all related to gameplay, so that entails a lot of things. So we're not done. Some more work by the same artist. So the wooden construction climbing kit. So this is interesting. So let's read. So same structure of the team. So suppose he'll show you a mini kit that I suggested, define modularity and created from zero to hero, I like this expression, in order to have an easy and authentic way to put climbing elements on flat surfaces everywhere we need such. The idea was to use exposed wooden construction elements to our advantage and to be able to add them in a controlled manner by achieving navigation and constructional credibility at the same time. I love this. Like, this is where this is the beauty of working in the video game industry. It's not just art. It's a lot of art. A lot of it is art. Like, you have to study, in this case, you have to study architecture. You have, of course, to study digital arts, and modeling, painting, and all that stuff for years. But then you have to come up with solutions, which, you know, probably not everything looked this way back then. But you have to become creative and make it so that the player can navigate, because it's a player's experience. It's a player navigating through a city. That's Assassin's Creed since the first one. So you take real elements that were used, that make sense, credibility, architectural credibility, constructional credibility. Also, you can't just put stuff randomly because it would be convenient. It kind of had to make some sense, and it has to make gameplay sense also. So this is where it becomes so interesting, and then you have a lot of you open up a lot of options when you do these things, right? So this is what's so interesting about that. And here you have it, decals. So those decals are added, so you understand that those those walls are actually without these things. Okay, so they are flat, they're reused so many times, so you save a lot on performances, and then you add those pieces where needed. So you don't need one version of the wall without and one version of the wall with those things. So it is way better on the performances. Here you have a very good look, a very nice angle, very interesting and informative stuff. Like, the one thing I think the student who graduates from school are, I wouldn't say lacking, but that they're not aware enough, and it's not to blame them, it's not to blame the teachers, the program, the schools. Time is short, even on a 3-year program, like you have to learn the basic tools, you have to be talented, and you have to be able to do stuff that looks good. But then you get in the industry, and in some cases it's not the focus. Like of course it's important, it's kind of a given that you have to do that, but then the shift, the focus shifts to gameplay. It could be destruction, destructible assets, could be so many things. Like in case of navigation, could be vaulting, could be, of course, everything involving collisions, the different type of materials, different collision materials, like so many things that, it's not like it's a huge secret, but it's like you can't learn that on your own because you're not making a game that involves so much stuff. So as an artist, so many, like honestly, so many years of our initial careers are just spent basically alone in our corner. And if you attended schools where you had teachers in the industry, they should have constantly be telling you, it's collaboration. You're going to work with all these people. You're going to interact with this department, tech art, and then gameplay, and then animation. And like you might have thought, but I'm just an environment artist. I'm just going to do environments, right? But no, I mean, yes, in a way, yes and no. You're going to be doing environments, but in collaboration with all the rest, like all the other departments. You know, like this is gameplay, this is navigation, this is pathfinding, this is nav mesh, this is like there's so many things involving, and of course, changing game, like working on a different project, you might have a whole lot of new things to learn, which is a positive, by the way. I'm not saying this as a problem. The problem is that people who wants to get into the industry, they have to be very curious and very eager to learn and open to that. Like, unfortunately, I know that some, and I'm not saying they're a bad person or anything like that, but they're kind of closed and they're kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna focus on my thing, I'm gonna get good at what I do, and then when I get a job, I'll get to know these things. It doesn't quite work this way. I mean, you will of course learn so many things when you are exposed to that experience, but you have to have that openness, and honestly, you have to dig and read and gather as much information on those topics as soon as possible. So another one, administrative house by the same artist, administrative house groups. So again, the same setup. This task was close to level art because the polishing work on the groups added a lot of detail and character to all the instances of the houses at the same time, and further developed the work for the level artists in the region. And they were, initial artists that worked on the kit. So what I did on the groups, what the artist did, worked on the facade to add architectural and constructional credibility, again, by adding different elements like windows, doors, columns. Added constructional elements like beams and columns on the facade and on all exposed roofs. Added a lot of decals for structural and surface damage of the houses. Added soil and dirt on all logical corners and spaces. Added dry grass and, added dry grass and vegetations on all logical places. Added decorative elements on all facades like mosaic, frescoes, capitals, etc. Worked on all their roofs to expose the flatness worked on all their roofs to escape the flatness of the surface, and that's a win. That's really mission accomplished. Also had the privilege to create a lot of the assets that you can see in my other posts. I'm glad that this polishing phase added a lot to the credibility of the administrative district and brought it to the next level. Let's take a look. Yeah, this is a really, really nice area. I remember specifically that part. Very, very cool. And this is a super nice shot where you see basically assembled groups. They call it groups. So it's assembled pieces, modular pieces. So, with a system that they have in their engine, this is not counting as 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 1 2 3 4 5. Like, it's not a multitude of static meshes. It's one group. It counts as one group. So it is composed of tons of little pieces, but they are assembled, and all these engines for open world are always streamlining the process of buildings, because it's a big thing, right? If you use modular kits and you end up with hundreds of small pieces, of course it defeats the purpose of performance and optimization for performances. So this is amazing work by this artist. Thank you very much. Let's just take an overall look at his work from here. It's such an interesting post, several posts actually, and breakdowns, and we can learn so much stuff. So thank you very much to the artist. Next artist is Pavel Parashkevov, and here we have an interior set, so interior architecture modules. Sharing some of the interior architecture modules that I did for AC Mirage. They are used in rich and middle class interiors in the game. I had to design and develop also small floors kit for them. So this is very interesting and is very, very flexible, as you can imagine. Some, of course, are very basic, but they have different shapes, different dimensions, sorry. And by just changing the material, they can be reused. Then they can add decals, they can do a little vertex painting, and this can be reused all across the city. So this is very interesting. As you can see, it's a completely different kit interior, and you have the inner part of the frame of the doors, and it's like just one-sided, right? It's just like one polygon, and then you have, of course, either the windows, the door frames, and this is loaded only when you get inside, and then when you get outside it's unloaded. So it's a set. This is why it's a separate mesh from the walls outside. This is always how it's managed, and you can see different styles, but this kit, which is quite big, is very, very versatile. So that's very good to understand how this was done. Next up, we have Axel Suzanne, who did something very specific for Mirage, and let's hear from him. When I started to work on AC Mirage, the first task was to create ledge beam. We have used a lot of techniques like weighted normals, mesh decals, tileable, and trim sheet. These meshes are very important inside the game, especially for navigation. So here you can see this is one example. Then you have another one here. Of course, they're all over the place. This is like a flagship of Assassin's Creed, and this is how artistically how they were decided, right? How they were done for the city of Baghdad. And this is a very important task. And here we have like 3 examples. So the artist mentioned weighted normals. We can see here to make those beams feel more rounded, right? Those ones here. And then you can see from the top part, they're actually pretty low poly and not that much geometry. So very, very, like very low geometry. And here on the sides, they feel really rounded up. Probably it was used on other sides, other corners. Well, mesh decals, of course, to have some variations. And yeah, so what was mentioned? Weighted normals, mesh decals, tileable, and trim sheets, of course. Trim sheet can be used for, having the whole thing. The wood, the ropes, the little rivets or little nails, all sorts of stuff that could have been done with the trim sheet. Here we have the contribution of Petar Zvezdanov. So let's read first what his contribution was all about. As you can see, you can already see, right? If you play the game, if you're familiar with the game, those are the very big gates from the inner city. So this is very interesting. So round city, wall, and gates asset kits. So at the later stage of development of AC Mirage, I was tasked with taking the existing placeholder assets for the round city walls surrounding Baghdad's inner districts and turning them into final quality assets. So that was quite the task. So additionally, I had to come up with a flexible modularity and create a reasonable amount of assets that could be used for creating the 4 main gates along the round walls. That is really interesting. And you can see here, right? You can see the base, and then you can see some variations. Actually, you can tell, right, which was added, what was added, what was removed. And then, of course, the different domes. And that's just the start of it. So that is super interesting. So the round walls presented quite a challenge. So round walls right here, due to their slight curvature, that and the large diameter of the ring they form initially created issues and random small offsets, Z-fights, when trying to snap them next to each other with a 5-degree rotation for each segment. That is an important thing. Rotation has to be done very precisely, and it has to be by 5 degrees or more, but it has to be by a multiple of 5. You cannot just wing it and just let's, for instance, in the traditional DCC or even in Unreal Engine, you cannot just remove the angle snap and just make it work like it's gonna work. That defeats your modularity, all the principles of modularity, right? You have to be able to reuse them. It has to be able to be reused somewhere else in the map. And if you need to tweak them to a degree that is like 1.78 or something like that, it's going to be very difficult to replicate elsewhere in another angle, like at 90 degree, or the whole structure being 90 degree or 30 degree or whatever. So this is very important. This is a problem, right? This is something, if you're working on a solo project, you can just like, it doesn't matter, just remove the snap angle toggle and just click. You just make it move, but you can't do that on the production. So to solve this, first I tweaked the pivots of the wall segments. That's smart. You probably had to redefine where the pivot would be. That would help. And then the technical artist, Georgi Christoph, provided quick and effective snapping via Houdini to form the inner and outer ring of the wall. So I'm not familiar with what was done here with changing the snapping via Houdini, but that's very interesting and that's very informative. So of course, texture artist provided a lot of work. For the gates, the concept provided by our art director, Nikolay Stoyanov, proved really useful and helped me divide a gate into enough modular pieces that could provide unique visual identity and silhouette for each of the 4 gates. This is so important for all the concept artists that are listening and that are hopeful to get a job in the industry. This is what this is all about. So concept art is not about beautiful, epic scale, large and impressive images. Those come later. And you will see the art directors posting on Artstation having those things, but that's like after years of working on the production. And in some cases, for their career, it's after years, maybe decades of work in the industry. So that's not what the daily work is. Concept art has one main role, and it's to provide the 3D art team with very informative, precise information and hints on how some parts can fit together. Okay, so it could be architectural, it could be mechanical for machines, for weapons, for stuff like that. For characters, it's in the same vein. It has to make sense with either the armor, again, the weapons, or the cloth, or whatever it is. It has to make sense and give the information to the 3D art team so that they can work faster or understand better what is needed. This is concept art in video games. Okay. Then from there are that's very, very interesting. So you see like the full pipeline. So the concept artists are working in the goal and with the exclusive goal of showing exactly how it's going to be built. Then the 3D artist build it, and then from there the level artists took the assembled gate groups and applied additional awesome propping on them in the level to give them more visual flavor and detail. So let's take a look. This is here, right? You see actually this is so cool. You see all the small pieces, right? You even see a little bit of inside, and then you see how they are assembled. Those are groups, right? That can be used more easily than just assembling everything all the time. It also saves performances, and all these proprietary engines have some kind of system that make it more manageable on the performances, talking about draw calls, all these things. And then the level artists, they can redefine which material would be used, but then when we see those in context with all the decoration, some foliage, of course the trees that would be before them, all the surrounding decoration, the decals, everything, and then you see it in all its glory with the lighting and all that, and it's absolutely glorious. But you see that they are very different. And even if you can tell, it's the same architecture, it's the same region. There is a level of uniqueness that can be achieved, even if upon close examination, you can see that, okay, this piece is exactly this one, and this one, and this one. But most people who don't work in this very field, they can't really tell. And it feels just that it belongs, right, to the same city, the same architecture, the same culture. So this is art. This is video game art, and this is really in all its glory when it's done properly, how it looks like. And this is like a very good shot. So this is like almost the explanation of the full pipeline. So this is phenomenal. You have of course the texture artist here who's mentioned. And additionally, I made a set of climbable elements that use traditional for this region ornaments and shapes. The idea for the round walls was for them to not be climbable for the player. So those small, slightly extruded from the wall surfaces assets can be used by the level designers to add a climbable path where they specifically need it. So this is again a gold mine of information. Like, you understand how everybody works together. We're talking about an environment artist here, expert environment artist, and he mentioned, of course, texture artist. That's like very, very obvious. There's a technical artist. There is the art director who did concept art. Then there are the level artists, and then there are the level designers. And there is more people involved and orbiting around environment art, but like this is just a great explanation of how like a typical pipeline in AAA. So you have those beautiful shots. Let me just show them once more. Different angle. Then you have these here, round wall. So those are the round walls, these parts here. Tower segments modularity, separate wall and tower module. So you can see and you can appreciate exactly how this was done. Then you see the groups that we all already looked at. And then you can see those guys, those top of the rampart, of the fortifications, they come with their own decals. So decals can be added and applied in the engine, but already those meshes come complete with their own decals. And there are decals also here and on the surfaces, and then kind of to create some kind of leaks right underneath. So this is very interesting too. Then you have those mentioned extruded parts that create a climbable path for the level designers. So you see them right here. Then you see most of the pieces here, and you see an amazing shot right here. So this is a great post. So thank you so much to the artist. And there's a bit more work shared by the same artist for the residential rich kit assets. So the artist was tasked with creating assets such as wall corners, ornamented arches, columns, etc. There aren't a lot of survived examples of Abbasid era architecture in modern day Baghdad. That is very important and very interesting. But there were enough references to be able to implement their very specific design in a big set of column capitals and ornamental stucco trim texture. So you got to understand the level of research, reference gathering. So it starts in college when you are told by your teacher that you should do your reference gathering, you should stick to your references, and this is a huge part of the job. And when you work on a production that has some kind of a historical accuracy or based on history, this might become challenging when we're talking about ancient cultures, like a specific era that we don't have many examples as of today. So you have to dig a bit further. This is more work. And this is very interesting. Additionally, use some areas of my town to gather scan data for a wall damage exposed bricks decal texture set that proved very flexible and was implemented in a wide variety of assets in the game. That is super interesting. We'll get into that in a minute. So you have here in context in the game, you have another angle, very cool angle to see all the details, all the design, all the wear and tear, damage over time that is shown. Here, a different style and different lighting also. And here you have it with those blocks, right? So you will have corners, wall corners, always together, always. And you will see more. Going right here, this is amazing. This is like a complete kit, and you will see corners always modeled together, both exterior and inner angle, if you will, so that you don't need one wall to snap perfectly with the other, and you build your structures like that. This, while possible, is not the way. The way that it's done, all those corners are always modeled together. And you see you have different dimensions depending on the need. And you see here a lot of material blending, of damage. This is like really not a straight line. This has a lot of interesting features. Here too, same. Very, very interesting. I really liked and appreciated the environment art. Really that point specifically in Baghdad when I played, how it really looked like a lived in old city, which was already at the time old, with a lot of weathering, a lot of different layers of material. Like it is so rich, like they did an amazing job. So it's really, really worth studying, and they are very generous, both the artists and Ubisoft, to share that with us. So we have to make the most of it. Like please take the time, study, analyze, and whenever you do an environment, think about these concepts, because this is how you should be doing stuff. I mean, this is one way of doing stuff, but there are many universal principles, I would say, right? And then here you see with the decal applied here, one decal, there's another one here, there's another one there, another one on the top part. You can see another parts of the kit, or the same parts but shown in a different angle. Same here. And those details really sells it. Like it really makes it feel absolutely believable, credible, right? It's not just pretty with all the the patterns, the details. Like the age of the building is absolutely credible thanks to those techniques and those little decals, which we're going to look into in a minute. Here you can see a sculpt done in ZBrush, like the trim, right? Those intricate patterns. So that is done by this artist in this case. In other cases, could be done by a texture artist, but right, it all depends. In some cases, it can be done, like the material can be done in Substance Designer, can be brought in ZBrush. There are many ways to approach this, but you know, you need someone with, I would say, a lot of patience, a lot of who did a lot of research, of course, because this is historically, you know, it has to be accurate to a certain point, and this is really super intricate work, super beautiful. Then you have those type of designs and those columns ornaments, which are absolutely amazing. This definitely is done in ZBrush. Then you have those pieces which you can appreciate, and always with the scale, put the character, which, you know, the standard of a character is a little under 2 meters. So you can always, like a male character in video games, it's usually 180 centimeters, so a little under 2 meters, and that would be probably 12. So if this is more or less 2, this would be 4, 6, 8. No, it would be probably 10 here, right? This is my best estimate. This would be 6, right? 2, 4, 6, more or less. And this is how, I mean, of course, it's more precise than that in the engine, just that they don't tell us. But yeah, it's, you know, it's always 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. It's not going to be a random number. And here you have, again, and here we can really appreciate those corners. And you have all the variations and the different layers of materials, the decals, and all the beautiful stuff that makes it very, very credible. And, you know, like there's quite a bit of repetition here and there, but honestly, they don't look the same. Like just by exposing different bricks here and there, it's the same tones, it's the same type of material, same blend of material, but different, they shuffle it, if you will, so that it really doesn't look like it's the exact same piece. So this is where this is how it works. And here is the aforementioned scan data. So high poly scan assets used for making a texture trim atlas. So that is great. And so the artist just mentioned that he did that in his own town, so modern day, right? So scan data, cleaned it, got a high poly that was usable, maybe cleaned it furthermore, and then these details would be used as part of an atlas and turned into decals. And so you have the texture atlas from wall damage scan data. So you have the albedo, you have the either cavity or AO. I believe this is AO, and normal, and the opacity map that you have to do very carefully so you don't have, you know, like weird bake issues, but they really didn't have. So usage and various game assets, and then you can appreciate this is completely bent, right? They're all pretty much straight. I mean, this has a little bending, but they are really, really bent on the assets, and it works extremely well. So this works so well. Like, this is an amazing technique, especially here. I really like, and I'm telling you, I was playing the game and I was stopping and just like in awe of the details that they could add. And yeah, the level of weathering, of wear and tear was just glorious. It was really, really something that struck me on the walls, the rocks and the stucco materials. And this is how it was done. So you can appreciate, you can try it for yourself, scan data, you can get it, but it's always good to do it yourself. Nowadays it's quite accessible. It's not really difficult. Getting it right might be difficult, but like having access to that might not be that difficult. I believe there's it's free now. Is it still free with Unreal Engine, the reality capture or something like that? yeah, you can import your pictures and you can manage it this way. So maybe more on that later. Maybe I'll do a video in the future on that. And then you have the same sculpt that we had here, right here. But then you have it with the materials, right? And you see which part are used. Of course, like this is beautiful, big and beautiful trim sheet that can be used everywhere. And you have it here in its complete version with all the little details. So this is amazing work and very, very generously shared with the community, the fans, the students, the juniors, everybody in this, I would say up until seniors and even experts. Like learning from other artists is how it goes. Either you're in college, you're learning from your teachers who are hopefully active artists in the industry or were very recently. Or then when school is over, you got your diploma and you're happy, but you get sad very quickly because you can't find a job. You gotta keep on learning from artists. And I'm not trying to make fun of anybody. It took 1 year for me to get a job. So it's, I don't wish the same fate on other artists, but it is what it is. It's a competitive industry. You gotta keep on learning all the time. It never ends, and it should never end. You should never reach a point where you're like, nah, I know enough. And then last but not least, we have Victor Ivanov, who's Associate Technical Art Director. And for Assassin's Creed Mirage, most trees were assessed that needed a graphical boost and were enhanced for the next generation of consoles. Due to time restrictions, a quite creative approach was made, handling the already existing props and adding geometry bark shells that added detail and depth to the meshes. All of that was streamlined in a pipeline using Houdini for the bark generation and 3ds Max for fine-tuning and assembling it together. Upgrading the whole kit in no time. Yeah, using Houdini and having a strong pipeline is phenomenal. Thanks to the pipeline of Samuel Muniz, with whom I collaborated on this task. Last pictures show the difference between previous gen and next gen version of those assets. PS, I added 3 resin because due to the fact that personally have never seen that element in a game, sculpted some pieces in ZBrush and optimized it in 3ds Max. That's really, really cool. So we can see the before and after. And yes, I see the resin here being quite the upgrade. But seriously, the bark, it's still kept quite low poly. But trees, like, unless you're a 3D artist, you're gonna go here and be like, I appreciate the details that they put in their stuff. Like if you're like the average gamer, and there's nothing wrong with being an average gamer, but you just pass by the trees and you're just like, oh, that's nice, and you're just busy thinking about what to do, who to kill, or what gear to get. But when you're an artist, you actually pay attention to these things, and this is honestly a huge upgrade. Very, very interesting stuff, and it's very, very nice that these artists are sharing and explaining what they used, basically how they used it, and that's so cool. You see there's like really big pieces that are added, knobs, some extra geo, like so much stuff that's going on. It's very incredible. See all that added stuff. That's really a lot of work. And then, yeah, there's also something very interesting. Unfortunately, I don't have the videos. Go and check it out on Artstation. There are videos where you can see the more reactivity of the cloth. So that's super interesting. So of the carpets and cushions. So they were enhanced using interactable shader for the next gen consoles. Necessary upgrades were done on the mesh, of course, probably more geo in general, and just retweaking them so that it works. Everything was done in 3ds Max while the shader was created and maintained in engine. Big thanks again to Samuel Muniz for the streamlined pipeline, as well as Nikolay Volkanov and Emi Dimitrova, with whom I collaborated on this task. that is super interesting. You can see already that there's quite a difference, right? This looks honestly quite flat and stiff, and here it looks way more credible. And I wish there would be GIFs, but we have a video. He posted videos where you see the character walking over the surfaces and you see the reaction of the cloth. And it's really great. Honestly, it adds a lot. Whether it's on the floor or on any surfaces, it's really, really cool. So great work to technical artists. It's really, it's those little things that adds a lot to the game. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you learned some things, you pick up a few tricks. You know, you won't go by yourself and create an open world game with tons of stuff, but you can do one building and apply those concepts, those ideas. And they are so generous with information. It's really a great time to be learning 3D and all the tricks of the trade. So thank you very much. I hope you appreciate it.